Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello, Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Hello, and welcome to Well, Hello, Anxiety. I'm your host, Dr. Jodi Richardson, and it is such a pleasure today to be talking about a topic based on a message that I received, a DM I received on Instagram from a parent who struggles with their own anxiety and is really worried about how their own anxiety is impacting their children and their family. And it is not uncommon for this to be a concern. I've been there myself, of course, as a woman who lives with anxiety, have done for a long time, and a mum as well. And what my hope is today is for you, after listening to this podcast, that you feel a whole lot less anxious about facing this challenge, and you feel a whole lot more confident as well. And what I do want to give you an insight into is that sometimes the very thing that makes you worry about your parenting is the thing that, you know, can help reassure you that you're doing a great job because you're looking to learn a little bit more about it. So I'm joined today by the wonderful Lisa Taylor. Lisa is a returning guest to the podcast. She's the author of The Perfect Parent Trap. She is also a family therapist. She's a mum of 3. She's got lots of experience, and she's here to talk to us about this very, very important topic. So, Lisa, a huge thank you for joining us, because I deliberately reached out to you when I received this question because I thought you're the perfect person to talk about this topic with.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here. I love all of your work and love being here. And listening to this conversation too, I think will be wonderful, because it's something that so many people that I speak to and see, have a similar problem.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, of course, you're unable to divulge any details because it's all anonymous and confidential, of course, but is this something that you talk to parents too in your family therapy consultations? Are you having these kinds of conversations? And what are some of the fears that parents are sharing if they do come to you when they're worried about how their anxiety, their own challenges with anxiety might impact on the way that they're raising their family?
Yeah, it is. It's really common. And, I suppose, firstly want to acknowledge that there was so much beautiful tenderness in this question that sat beneath what this person was asking. And because it's a parent who's worried about the impact that they're having on their child. And it is something that I see so much in my therapy room and in the families, and particularly when families are having really big difficulties and, anxiety in whether it's a parent with anxiety or a child with anxiety, there's often, the thinking of parents is that, have I stuffed them up? Or, I had a mum the other day saying, I think we've broken him, when we were talking about the impact of a child's anxiety on the family and how the family was trying to work around this really tricky, young woman. So it is common. And I think, I want to begin by saying that you don't have to be perfectly calm or perfectly okay all of the time to be a wonderful, safe and loving parent. That, children will see us struggle at times, and what matters is that they come to what they understand about the struggle more than anything, and that whether they feel responsible for it or whether they see us taking responsibility for ourselves.
That was one thing that I felt as a kid growing up with a really anxious mum. I felt that, I've done something wrong. There's a funny meme I shared on Instagram once, and it was, Alice in Wonderland when it's the Mad Hatter's tea party, and the Mad Hatter said, everyone around here's mad. And this little meme has Alice saying, at me? Like, who's mad at me? And that's how I felt growing up with my own understanding of my anxiety. What I've done is I've sort of talked openly about it over the years. As the kids got older, they've understood more. And just to really reinforce that idea that this is how I'm feeling at the moment. I'm okay. I know what I need to do, but I just want to let you know that you'll probably notice I'm not my usual self.
No.
It's nothing to do with you. And I've felt really good about being able to say that. And that has been something that I know that they've appreciated. And it's And what you just said is really important, isn't it? How can parents start to talk about their own anxiety with their children if they've never kind of like thought to kind of talk openly about it in the past?
Yeah. Look, I think it's really important, and even what you're saying, about Alice in Wonderland, is it me? And I think that's something that our nervous systems are relational. So we, children notice our tone of voice, they notice our facial expressions, they notice, the pace and the energy and that feeling. They notice it often before we even understand sometimes what's happening. And I think that they sense that something's wrong. And the importance for us is that when nothing is said, often children will make it up or they'll create their own explanation, if you like. So they might say, well, is mum upset with me? Did I cause this? Or, do I need to make things better? Like, how do I make this kind of go away? And I think when we can simply name the anxiety or name the feelings or, express what's happening for us, that then it calmly helps to protect our children from carrying the responsibility. And I think in families, that's what we want to be really thinking about is, are we sharing and are we being responsible for what's ours and not allowing our children to carry, the responsibility of fixing, the anxious parent? Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Not having to fix it and not feeling responsible and not feeling responsible as in I've caused this, but also
Yeah.
not feeling responsible as this is my problem to solve. I have to find a solution for it. And look, what we do know is that when we do live with an anxiety disorder, or anxiety is a significant part of our lives, and of course everybody's experience is different, isn't it? And it can show up in lots of different ways, from not being able to focus to, not maybe dropping the ball on a few things, maybe being a little bit irritable, a bit snappy, lots of different ways that it can show up. And so it's a very reasonable question that as a parent, if I'm feeling this way and I'm responding the way or reacting the way I am, am I going to stuff them up? How am I going to impact my kids? And I know that, that it's not the anxiety itself. We've talked about that, it's a very normal emotion. We know that it's not always a disorder. And it's good for us as parents to talk about our emotions and share, in age-appropriate ways, kind of to help our kids learn and to role model. But there are some behaviours out there that anxious parents enact that can influence our kids. I mean, like, we don't want to dance around this. That yes, your parenting, sometimes when anxiety is in the driver's seat, can be different to how it would be if anxiety was, in the boot. It has to come along, doesn't it? It has to come with us.
Yeah.
But we, if we can get in the driver's seat, what are some of the ways that parenting when anxiety is part of the picture can influence kids? It's that overprotectiveness sometimes, isn't it? And there are other aspects to this that are important, I think, to talk about.
Yeah, I think that children experience fear in different ways, and we do as well. So sometimes our over anxiousness can be seen as overprotective, or we worry about everything, and so then our children can experience the world as unsafe. And often the time to talk about this stuff is not when you're fully into an anxious moment or having a moment where you actually, really need to focus on what you need. These conversations outside of those moments are really important, where we can talk about, like my mind was imagining lots of terrible things that could happen. And it was like you said, in the driver's seat, and, even apologizing and repairing, I think sometimes is, actually that was my, my busy mind taking over then. And I should have let you go and not be worried that something might happen. So I think there's sort of a mix of things. So showing your children, that you can handle your feelings, at times, and sometimes that might not be possible, but I think being really open about, actually, I need to take a break, or I need to, this is what I'm feeling, and so let me let me take some time. I need to just step away for a moment. So being really honest about that, and of course age appropriate, but children will often follow you and want to make sure you're all right. So just really reassuring them that you're okay. And having those conversations when it's not our problem, I think is that really important, showing children that difficult feelings can be noticed and named and even moved through. And I think that's a really important thing that we should be sharing, that we don't have to fear them or we don't have to pretend that they aren't there, that actually we're sharing them, and we're sharing them in a way that shows that sometimes it impacts our children's lives too, because we over worry or we overprotect.
And yes, that role modeling, it's so liberating because instead of feeling like you have to kind of bottle it up and put on a brave face, and the other night I was feeling quite overwhelmed. I was feeling pretty sad about my dad's declining health and just had a lot of balls in the air, like living this adult life. It's hard. There's some days where things just feel harder. Unusually for me, I was just trying to manage myself. The family were busy, lots of things were happening. And it was funny, Lisa, because I got up to sort of finish cleaning the kitchen. Our son had done the cooking, and I thought, look, I think I'll relax a lot more once this is done. And I got up to go and do some, finish a couple of things in the kitchen, and I was watching footy or a program or something with our son and my husband Peter, and they both said, "Hey, come and sit down and just don't worry about that for now." I was kind of torn between this. I'm trying to do things to kind of manage this feeling, like I'm trying to control my environment. I'm trying to, but then they felt that, we don't want to see you up working while we're relaxing. Come and join us. Do that later. We'll help you, kind of thing. And anyway, I just was trying to kind of keep a lid on it. And our son said, "Hey, Mum, I can see you're not great." And meanwhile, I'm in my hoodie, my hood's up. I'm really trying hard here to just like pretend this is not happening. So, and it's not like me at all to do that. It is so unlike me. So even though when we've normally got the skills and we normally communicate in that way, sometimes we just can shut down a little bit, can't we? And he observed that and he said, "Hey, I can see," he goes, "Mum, just be how you are." And he's 18. Obviously, he's a very emotionally intelligent young person, but they can tell if we are trying to bottle it up, if we are trying to kind of like put on a brave face, then it really impacts them. And so we can sometimes think, I'm better off just like dealing with this myself. Whereas the more helpful approach for all of us, because there's no getting around the fact that you're not great. And whether you say it or you don't, it's noticed. And so to the parent who sort of feels like, yeah, but I don't want to burden them, I don't want them to have to see me upset. What would you say to the parent who sort of feels like, yeah, I just feel like I have to do it all myself?
I think the important distinction is for children, because you're right, they notice everything, is that you can care about how I feel, but you are not responsible for how I feel. So a parent needs adult support for adult problems. So just children will try, they might stay close, they might be extra good, they might try keeping the peace, they might try and distract you. There's lots of ways that children move around our feelings. And so I think, sharing with them that you can care about how I feel, but you are not responsible for how I feel.
Oh, that is so powerful. And I think of the mum who wrote to me, and thank you for writing to me. And for any of you who are listening who have an anxiety challenge in your family life or in your world, please write, because this is what I'll do. I'll reach out to people like the wonderful Lisa Taylor and have a conversation and support you. And I think that it is, as parents, we care so much, don't we, about raising mentally healthy children. We want our kids to be happy, of course. And it's painful to think that something that is, to a certain extent out of our control, how our mental, we can look after our mental health, we can seek help, but day to day, our mental health does affect us. And if anxiety is part of the picture, it can absolutely just sort of be something that is obvious to other people who are around us. And so I think this first message that we can talk about how we feel, that we can, it's actually really healthy to sort of share. And you can say, hey, I'm feeling a bit anxious right now, and I'm just going to take myself off outside for 5 minutes because I just want to take a few breaths, feel my feet on the grass, pat the dog, touch a tree, listen to the birds sing, just reset. Then I want to come back. And just even being able to do that, it gives you the chance to kind of come back and respond rather than trying to react in the moment. If somebody needs your attention, age appropriate, again, little people will follow us. You talked about that earlier, but just also this idea that we all have feelings. They should all be we should welcome our feelings. It's important for us to make room for them, but letting our kids know that they're not responsible. I know you care about how I feel, but you're not responsible in terms of causing how I feel. I mean, sometimes we can be frustrated, and it's okay to say that too. I'm frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other part of that too was that when we do that, what we're actually saying to our children as well is that this feels worrying to me, but it might not feel worrying to you, and that's perfectly okay, that we can have different feelings and that you can experience the world in a different way. And this might be the same experience that we can have, but I might feel like this and you might not, and that's perfectly okay. So it sort of helps children, I suppose, understand the feelings and understanding that they can be different and not feel like they're betraying their parent if, they don't have the same feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's something that takes time, isn't it, in family life for us as parents to learn, to understand ourselves and to learn through conversations like the one that we're having now. And you just said, but I'll never forget when you said, am I responding to the child in front of me or to the child within me? And I guess when it comes to the way that we are as parents, we are, that is something for us to hold in our awareness as well, whether anxiety is part of the picture or not. We did have a really in-depth conversation about that last time. But I want to come back to this idea of maybe overwarning or maybe putting in more guardrails than are necessary if we are anxious. And, for all of the things that our kids will do, everything from when they start to catch public transport by themselves, they're walking to school, they're going to somebody's house for a play date and we're not invited. I'll never forget the first time our son was invited for a play date, and I didn't realise this was a kids-only play date because the mum had some plans on getting a little bit of work done. And, I stayed for a cuppa. I didn't even drink tea or coffee back then, but I just needed to, all of these experiences. And sometimes I think when anxiety becomes part of the picture, not sometimes I think, what we know is that sometimes we can say no or not support our kids to venture out into the big wide world in the ways that are age appropriate and important because of our own fears and worries. And I remember another guest of mine once saying, as a parent, and I'd love your thoughts on this, asking ourselves, what does this situation call for? And also your thoughts on, for parents who are kind of nodding and thinking, yes, like I'm not in a hurry for my child to get their learner's permit or to, start doing some of these things like traveling into the city, on the train with friends. What would you say to parents who kind of identify with that kind of thinking and feel like, oh, I'm at risk of maybe being a little bit overprotective because of my own anxiety?
I think it's definitely a real thing, and at different levels and different ages. I think the awareness is always going to be the thing that's key, and that's when we can have awareness of our feeling. or our fear. And sometimes in the moment we react really quickly. And, that question about, am I responding to the child in front of me or reacting to the child within me, is often that reaction mode. So we know that when we kind of really quickly snap at something or say a no, that really quickly that's often because of something internally for us. So in the book, I talk about this courage pause, because it takes courage to pause and kind of wonder and be curious about what's happening in our own selves. And so, taking a breath, noticing what's going on, wondering about what's happening in this moment, what is needed here. I think, similar to what your other person said. And then even naming it, like, I'm actually scared that you're going to get hurt, or, and you might not even name it to the child. This might be a conversation you have with yourself, but, I'm frightened that he won't make friends, or I'm frightened that they'll get, taken off the street or have a car accident or something. And so then just doing some kind of reality checking of that and determining kind of whose need am I responding to in this moment? And so, age appropriately, children at 17 or 16 need to get their license, or their learners, and we have to sit in the, I chose not to, I might just say that, but we have to let them do those, scary, frightening things. But I think it's important to just recognize whose need I'm responding to, because there is a developmental need for children to go out and explore the world and to make mistakes and to, stuff things up and to come back to us and say that was really awful, or you were right, or that was, developmentally our children are meant to be doing these things. So I think, observing your own feelings, naming what you think might be happening, really considering and determining whose need is most present at the moment, then explore that with a bit of curiosity. So no judgment, just curiosity, and then respond in the way. And that gives us a choice rather than being locked into, well, I said no and knows what's going to be the answer. We can explore it and be kind to ourselves, because it's hard, this parenting business.
It's so hard. My favourite saying is, it wasn't in the brochure.
No.
Nobody warned me. Oh,
yeah.
Lisa, what you've just said is so beautiful, and it is. And I think what you said about this courage just to pause and to think about what's important. Their job is to move away from us and to move closer to their peers and to explore the world and become independent. And the opposite, I do know of a person who is a similar age to me who still lives with their parents and never did sprout those wings. Those wings were unfortunately never nurtured isn't the right, but I think sometimes we can look at what's the cost of not supporting our kids to develop their independence. And that could be a child that is dependent on us for the rest of their lives. And nobody wants that. That's not good for anybody.
No.
And when I think about this idea that having that awareness, having that moment, taking that breath and thinking, whose needs am I meeting here? That question has really stuck with me, because, and I know as a parent that I've sometimes almost kind of narrated this decision making when I'm having a conversation with one of my children about something that they might want to do, and saying, these are the thoughts, and I'm not suggesting this is the way to go, Lisa, you'll tell me, no doubt. But I've kind of in the past, for example, our son has caught the train from the Mornington Peninsula to the city to watch the footy with his mates. Now, rightly or wrongly, I was less hesitant about him doing that than our daughter when she wanted to do it at the same age. And there's a lot of crime in Melbourne. There are a lot of incidents that have happened. And I remember saying to her, yes, you can go. I feel really anxious about it. It's actually something that's creating anxiety in me. And, there's a part of me that kind of wants to say, I'll drive you. I think back to when I was, in year 9, we used to catch the train into the city all the time. I was catching the train and the bus everywhere when I was her age. And life's a bit different now, but I kind of just did share a couple of the things that were coming up for me. She's 16, so she's not a little kid. And for me, that was kind of, I guess, rightly or wrongly, I was kind of like thinking out loud, but saying yes, but also trying to manage my anxieties in the moment. It's not ideal, but I knew what the answer needed to be, but it was a really hard answer for me to give nonetheless.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's perfect. And I think, also asking for what you need as well. So yes, you can go. I need you to make sure Snap Maps or whatever, tracking device you use is on. I think there's nothing wrong with that in terms of just so that their safety is okay, and that it can make that sort of transition to independence a little easier for them when you've discussed all of the things that you need and your worries. I think that's perfectly fine. I think the other thing is it's really important to think about sometimes the role that anxiety can play in families and the way that people reorganize themselves around anxiety. And so that might be a discussion for another time, but just thinking about the person that you said that's still living at home, that sometimes, when we're not talking about it and not bringing awareness to it and not thinking about needs and our children's needs for independence and, and time away from us, that, we can get pulled into situations that keep everybody kind of very stuck and almost at times maybe resentful of the other.
Yes. Yeah, stuck is such a great word to talk about when anxiety is part of the picture, and whether or not you're the anxiety is no matter what kind of brought it on, no matter why anxiety is part of the picture, it doesn't really matter. But things can get really stuck quite quickly if we let it, because it's about safety, isn't it? It's about when the anxiety shows up, the brain is something about what's happening feels unsafe, and safety is so, oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful feeling. It's just so, and no wonder we kind of like want to lean towards what feels that way. But if safety is the consideration, the way I've tried to look at it, managing my own anxiety, and as listeners to the podcast over a period of time will know, I'm medicated for my anxiety. I've had lots and lots of therapy. I've got a really big toolkit. I use my tools. I can apply them. And so my anxiety is really well managed, but it doesn't mean that anxious thoughts don't regularly pop up, especially around our precious kids. And I think about safety, and that if, at some point or another, our kids are going to be entering the world without us being beside them. And it can be a very frightening thing to think about for any parent, let alone an anxious parent. And yet the only way they will learn that they can cope and they can have opportunities to make decisions and to develop the skills of being a safe, independent person in the world are to flex that muscle and have practice. And we have guardrails, don't we, at first? And then we slowly remove the guardrails, and all of a sudden your kid's behind the wheel of a car taking themselves wherever they want to go. Yeah. And by the time they're 18, we want to have these skills and insights, knowledge and wisdom kind of under their belt, and protecting them isn't going to get them there, is it?
No. And often our need to stay in control is to make everything okay, and is to, that's what we think gives us safety. But in relationships, it's tricky because, we need to also provide our children with independence and autonomy, and, allow them to go out and bump into things in the world. So it is a tricky space. And look, I'm certainly have a lot of anxiety as well. My highly sensitive and highly emotional, and so I suppose my ability to pick up on who's doing what and when and how is what makes me a great therapist, but sometimes can send me into overdrive as well. So I totally understand and get those feelings of anxiety around letting your children, do things. I think part of that too is also being really clear on what your rules are going to be around, growing up and, teenage things. I think being really clear on that's
Yes.
another important thing. But certainly for people to, your child doesn't need you to hide your anxious feelings, and they need to know that your anxiety is not their fault. It's not theirs to fix, and it's not evidence either that the world is always unsafe. I think they need to see that feelings can be spoken about, that support can be, sought, and that, relationships can be repaired when, maybe we get it wrong. And I think that, that's not imperfect parenting when we do those things. I think that's just deeply human parenting. And I think that's what we need. The world needs more of that.
I couldn't agree more. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love talking with you. And I just want to say, Lisa, a huge thank you for your time today. And for, honestly, there was no other guest. I just immediately, when that question landed, I'm like, I'm going to email Lisa and say, please, can you join me to talk about this? And you said yes straight away. And I love your work. And for anyone who is listening who would like to learn more about your work or connect with you or maybe work with you, do you work online as well as in person? I imagine you
absolutely.
do.
Yeah. And often I work
how
just
can
with a parent or just with one parent, sometimes with families. I'm over on the Bellarine Peninsula, so I see people face to face there, but online as well. I've written a book called The Perfect Parent Trap, so that's out now, which is a lot around, I suppose, flipping the script on traditional parenting and really looking at the heart of parenting. And it's bringing things back to basics and back to, what's really in our hearts when we want to parent these beautiful people. So Strengthening Families Australia is my website, and lisataylor.au on Instagram, so follow along. And we've got an event coming up in Melbourne with some other ladies, which I'll share on my Instagram, which is it's called Mothers in the Light. So it's all around bringing light to mothers and everything else that happens.
Lisa, a huge thank you again. I can't thank you enough for your work and just the heart you bring. It's just perfect for this beautiful podcast community, and I'm really grateful. So thanks again.
Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for being here and for you opening these conversations. I think it's it's brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.